Good morning, aviators. Welcome to a new installment on my channel that I'm doing called the Absolute Beginner Guide series for DCS. This particular series will focus on the F-15 Eagle, while further down the road I will implement guides for other aircraft. If you are someone who's been looking at DCS or has the game and not sure where to get started, this guide is for you. And for those who are more experienced with DCS, you're welcome to hang around and provide further assistance in the comments below. This first video will be setting up the flight controls for the F-15 Eagle. On a previous video, I showed you how to install the Thrustmaster 1600 series flight pack, joystick, throttle, and rudder pedals. Now, if you have that setup or a similar setup, you're welcome to follow along as well. So before getting started, I want to show you my HOTAS layout for the joystick and the joystick plus the throttle quadrant. This exact HOTAS map is available in the description below. So each button that I have mapped to a control I have listed here. Now there are two different control inputs for the same button, and that is because we're going to use something called a modifier button. So when a modifier button's pressed and you press, let's say, button number 1, if with the modifier you select the guns, if you push it without the modifier, you fire the guns. So you have double the capacity for your total number of buttons. I'll show you how to set up the modifier and how to set up each button exactly how I have it listed here. And this is a pretty good basic setup, and you can tweak it as you want, but this one works really good, especially for the 1600 series Thrustmaster edition. So going back to DCS, the first thing we want to do is go into Controls. And if you have anything defaulted here, and I do because I previously set it up before, we are going to clear the categories for the throttle, joystick, and rudder pedals. So clear category. There shouldn't be anything on the rudder pedals for this, but... And we also have to clear it in access commands. Okay. Now to set a modifier, because that's very important first, we are going to come here down to modifiers. I'm going to remove this and show you how to re-add it. You click add. I'm going to go to the throttle quadrant, and it will be button 2, and I'll show you why, because I have button 2 set up as my modifier. Click OK, click OK. That's now the modifier, and we can add it. So first, real setting up here, we're going to go to the axis controls and start with the joystick. So for the pitch axis, what we're going to do, under the joystick column, pitch, double click, you're going to move the joystick back and forward all the way, and it should automatically detect the pitch axis. Click OK, and sure enough, pitching forward, pitching aft. We're going to come down to roll, going to go directly left, directly right, automatically detects the x-axis for roll, left, right. Works pretty well. Now, for those who only have the joystick and do not have rudder pedals, you will also use the joystick as your rudder. So double click on rudder, then you're going to twist the joystick left and twist it right. It'll automatically detect the axis. That's how you will yaw the aircraft if you do not have rudder pedals. For those with rudder pedals, you can go ahead and clear that. Also with wheel brakes. So coming to wheel brakes, I'll go back to the joystick diagram. There is a slider here. So without rudder pedals, there is a slider here, and that's how we will control the wheel brakes. So you go to joystick, click on brake, wheel brake that is, slider all the way forward, all the way back, it automatically detects it. So max braking, no braking. If you have rudder pedals, go ahead and clear that, or don't even input it in the first place. Perfect. So now, under throttle, we're going to go to thrust. Double click thrust, slide your throttle all the way forward and slide it all the way back. Should automatically detect max power, minimum power, and it does detect full range of motion. The other thing here in the throttle quadrant is the zoom view, which I use this antenna slider on the left part of the throttle quadrant to determine how much I am zoomed in or out while playing DCS. Because my left hand's on the throttle quadrant, it is very easy to just use my pinky to quickly scroll in and out. So under throttle, double click zoom view, slider all the way forward and all the way back, click OK. Now, it is opposite. So when I'm trying to zoom in, it actually zooms out. So what I need to do is go to axis tune, invert. And now max is max zoomed in, minimum is minimum. So that works great. Now for the people who have rudder pedals, I'm going to come down in the rudder column, down to rudder, double click. I'm going to push in on the left rudder pedal and then the right rudder pedal. Click OK. There's left, centered, right, back to centered. It should always come back to centered. If not, your adapter may be put in vehicle mode instead of airplane mode. Then we'll come down, and because we have the rudder pedals, we can individually do the brakes. So click on the left wheel brake and then push down on the left toe brake on your actual rudder pedal. It should automatically detect. There's max braking and there's minimum braking. We'll repeat that process with the right. So double click on right, use the right toe brake, press down on it. It'll automatically detect. Click OK. And this is what you should see. So all of our axes have been detected. Now we need to tune some of them. So for the joystick, for the pitch, click it once, come down to axis tune, and we're going to move the curvature to 30. Think of curvature as decreased sensitivity. You can put input and it won't be as sensitive until it gets all the way out here. Make it a little bit easier to fly and a little bit more realistic. We don't need a dead zone or saturation, or don't need to worry about inverting this. So click OK. We will repeat that for the roll. Click once, axis tune, curvature 30. You could also just type it in there. And click OK. The rudder, oops, didn't mean to double click that. Click it once, axis tune. We're going to move the rudder to 35, decrease the sensitivity even more. And then we are going to create a dead zone of 10. So a dead zone is pretty much exactly what it sounds. You can have an input of 10 on your rudder pedal, and it won't put any control input till you get past 10. Once you get past 10, it'll start implementing the control surface on the aircraft itself, which is pretty similar to real aircraft. We don't need to worry about an axis tune for the thrust, the slider, or the wheel brakes. So our axes are completely set up. Now we're going to go to all but axis commands. Everything's cleared out, and now we're going to search for each individual item we want to set up. So going back to the diagram here, there's a total of 16 buttons on the joystick, 4 up top, 6 on the left, 6 on the right, and they are mapped out exactly as mentioned here. So for 1, under the base function, that is to fire the M61 cannon. I just call it the guns. And to select the guns, you press the modifier and then press 1. You also have this hat switch. I call it the trim switch because that's where I have all my trim functions. So if you move the hat switch forward, trim forward, that's nose down trim. If you pull it back towards you, that's aft trim or nose up. And then left trim is trimming left wing down, and right trim is trimming right wing down. So that's what we're going to set up first. We're going to go to the hat switch and search trim, because that's easy. And we're on the joystick, so we're going to double click the nose down on the joystick, move the hat switch forward, automatically detects, click OK. Then you're going to go to nose up, so aft or back or down on the hat switch, that's detected. And left is pretty easy, you're just going to move the switch left. And repeat the process with the right, go to the right. Looks good. So now, if I click any of these inputs, it will automatically detect them. That's good. Takeoff trim is where we add our first modifier. So we're going to put in the same input as nose up trim, so back on the hat switch or down on the hat switch. But before we actually do that, we're going to press the modifier button. So you have to press and hold it in the sim to actually get that function. So press and hold modifier and bring nose up trim. That will give us takeoff trim using the modifier function. So click on takeoff trim. You're going to hold down that modifier button that we created earlier. Then do the nose up or down on the hat switch. And it's all set up. So click OK. And that's how you use the modifier. Pretty easy. So now we're going to set the rest of the top of the joystick. So button 1, button 2, button 3, and button 4. So button 1, I like to set up the modifier first for this one. So selecting the guns, it's under cannon, and then a fire the guns is just the base function, which is, I believe is, I can't remember exactly what it's under, but we'll take a look. So starting with cannon. So that's how you select the cannon. We're going to click on joystick because that's what we're doing. Oh, double click on it. Push the modifier and then push the trigger, button number 1 on the joystick. Automatically detects it. And then we need to look up weapons fire, which is right here. And that's how we actually fire the cannon, the M61 cannon or the guns. So we're going to double click on it and just push the trigger, no modifier. And button 1 is done. So now coming back, we're going to set up button number 2, this push button at the bottom of the top of the joystick. So that, our base function will be weapons release, and you have to hold that for the sim. You can't just quickly press it in the weapon release. So weapons release will be for the missiles. And then if we use a modifier, so that button 2 on the joystick, and push this down, we will get the function of request a bogey dope, which is a heading, altitude, and range to target. And I don't like to go through the command chat for that, so that's why I have it synced to a button. So weapons release is actually right here. So I'm going to double click and just push button 2, which we were just looking at, and click OK. Then go into request bogey dope, because as a modifier, I'm going to click the modifier, then click button 2, and it's OK. Now this is joy button 2 and joy button 2. I'm not clicking the joystick button twice. I'm clicking that modifier from the throttle and then the button 2 on the joystick. That one's a little bit confusing. We'll stay on this page. Go back to the joysticks and let's look at button number 4, because with the modifier on button 4, that's request tanker, and we're on that page, so we're going to set it up. The other one is weapons change, so you can cycle between different types of missiles such as AMRAAM, Sidewinder, and Sparrow. So 4 with modifier, that will be our request tanker, so we'll do that first. So request available tanker, we're going to double click it, use the modifier, press button 4. Then we're going to go back to weapons. Oops. And weapons change. So we're just going to double click on it and push button 4. Excellent. The last one on the top of the joystick is target lock. So just by pressing that 3 button, you'll lock onto a target with your radar. And if you use the modifier and that button, it's basically an unlock while you're in the TWS mode. So we're going to look up lock, target lock, right there, under joystick. We're going to double click, press the joystick button 3, and it's all set up. Then to unlock TWS target, we're going to double click on that, use the modifier button, and then press button 3. And that is set up. Now let's look at the left quadrant for the joystick. So 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 is how it is aligned, and it is perfectly reciprocated up here. So starting with 5 and 10, the two left ones, if you just press the button, that's left engine start and right engine start respectively. But if you push a modifier and press 5 and 10, it will be left engine stop and right engine stop respectively. So we will set up the engine start and stop sequence first. So left engine start, we're going to click on that. And because we had it set for 5 on the joystick, we're going to click button number 5, no modifier. Then right engine start, going to click that, and button 10, which is directly below it. That's all set up. And now we're going to click on left engine stop. Make sure the modifier is pressed, press button 5. Click OK. Then right engine stop, modifier, button number 10 right below. Now why do I use the modifier for this instead of just setting it somewhere else on the joystick? Well, when you're pushing a lot of buttons in a fight and trying to switch radar modes, it's very easy to click a button you don't want to. And I, early on, shut down an engine while in a fight. Didn't mean to, and ended up, I think the guy ended up killing me. So I made that modifier switch, so I purposely have to push that button to turn off my engine. Because if your engine's already running and you press start engine, nothing bad's going to happen. At least not in the F-15. Okay, that's covered. Going back. Now we got our radar buttons that we're going to be talking about. 6, 7, 8, and 9. So these 4 right here. So number 6, radar on off. Radar 7, button 7 will be radar scale in. And button number 8 will be radar scale out. That has no modifier buttons on it. Number 9 is a little different. Number 9, RWS TWS select will be our base function, and then when we use the modifier, it will be the radar pulse frequency. So let's look up radar. They should all be right next to each other. Okay, radar on off, that is going to be our number 6 button, so double click on the 6 button, and click OK. Radar let's see here. Radar RWS TWS mode select is going to be our base function for button number 9, so double click and push button number 9. Radar display zoom in, that is going to be our number 7 button, so click on it, double click, and then button number 7, okay, and then zoom out, double click, button 8. Now, the radar pulse frequency select, we also have on button number 9, but we need a modifier so we could use it. So double click on it, use the modifier button, and button number 9. So if we want to go RWS, TWS, we can click button 9 all day, but as soon as we add that modifier in, it selects frequency select. We'll talk about return to search and the TWS later on. It's not pertinent right now. We'll probably put that on button number 6 with a modifier later on. Okay, now coming to the right side, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. The 2 to the outside right, 11 and 16, that's my refueling types of buttons. So ready for pre-contact and refueling, boom, point, open. So we're going to come, look for refueling, perfectly right there. So ready for pre-contact under joystick, double click, button 11, click OK. Refueling boom, double click, button number 16, OK, and we are set up for our refueling. 12 and 15, next waypoint or target or previous waypoint and target. So we can cycle through different waypoints and targets. We'll cover that later, but that's all they do. And it's pretty easy to look up. All you're going to look up is next waypoint airfield or target. So on the joystick, for next, we're going to click the top, which is button number 12. Click OK. Then we're going to go to previous. Click on it. That'll be button number 15 down below. Click OK. That is set up. Now target range decrease and target range increase, it's kind of the same thing. Decrease your scaling in, increase your scaling out. So that's why I have it set up this way. So 13 is decreasing, 14 is increasing. Buttons number 13 and 14 respectively. So I'm going to look up target range. There we go. So target range decrease, joystick, it's going to be button number 13, there we go. If you accidentally click a wrong button, no worries, you can just correct it. Then click OK. Predicted target range increase, that's going to be button number 14 right below it. That is set up, looks good. Now, let's see, nope, we have everything set up on our joystick. So congratulations, we're done with that part. Now we're going to move on to the throttle quadrant. So button number 1 is unintuitively down here, so that's actually the last one we're going to set up. But so looking at the throttle joystick, the left side of this picture is front and the right side of this picture is front. It's a little confusing, but this section is on the opposite side where you can't see in this diagram. So that's why they have it illustrated like that. We've already set up our antenna selector and our modifier button. So the first thing we're going to do is the eject button, which is button number 3 right here. So type in eject. Going to go to throttle, button number 3. Excellent. Now, this toggle switch, which it's a spring-loaded toggle switch, so it goes to the middle. And if you press down, it'll release back to the middle after you release the pressure. And if you push or pull up, it'll release after you let go. And this is a perfect spot for our countermeasures. So when pushing down, I'm dispensing chaff. And when pulling back on it, I dispense flares. Right, my finger lays right over top of it while on the throttle anyway, so it's perfect. So coming back, we're just going to look up dispense countermeasures. So for chaff, that's number 5, that's down. So on the throttle, I'm going to click down on that toggle. So button number 5, that's correct. And flares dispense, it's going to be button 4, so pulling up on it. That's okay. All right, excellent. I don't use anything on the rocker switch, and I don't use anything on this mini stick, whether the push or the scroll at this point. I think there is one control I might put on it, but that will probably be TDC sensor when we talk about it. Okay, so we set up this front portion so far. We're going to move to the side portion. So there's three main 4-way toggles, in this case an 8-way toggle here, and this single push button. The D-pad, the POV pad, it's 8 possible directions, but I only use 4 of the possible directions, and you may not even need to use 4 of them. So if you do not have head tracking, this is what you will use to look around. So scrolling left, scrolling up, scrolling right, scrolling down. You could also look upper left, upper right, and down right, down left. I don't use it anymore because I have a head tracking, so I don't even use that function except when in third person mode to just look around my aircraft. With the modifier, this is how we use the target designator selector, or target designator up, left, right, and down. So that's what I'm going to set up. So we're going to go to target designator, if I could spell. Target designator. There we go. So starting with the throttle, that upper section, which is the up, it's not actually listed as any number per se, it's just the up part of it. So you're going to click target designator up on the throttle, use the modifier, and press up. It won't give you a button, just letting you know it's up. Click OK. So now to the left, going counterclockwise, target designator, use the modifier, and click left on that position switch. Then looking down, throttle, modifier, down. Then to the right. So modifier, and to the right now on that toggle switch, or position switch, and that looks good. Click OK. Now that target designator to center, I think what I am going to do is I'm going to use this mini stick, just pushing in, so it moves around, but then you can also press in on it, so I will do that. So target designator to center, press button 6, looks good. Now, this is a true 4-way position switch. It goes up, down, left, or right. Now, the way this came out, this is partially broken. So position 10, which is towards the pilot, that speed brakes in or air brakes off, depending on the aircraft you fly. Position switch 8, away from the pilot, is speed brakes out or air brakes on. Now, for some reason, that out selected all the way over here. Don't know why that happened. I'll try to fix it before I post this. So we will come looking for air brakes. Air brake off. You can use the throttle. Button 10, so that speed brakes in. Speed brakes out or air brakes on, double click and use button 8. And that is set up as published. 10 is off, 8 is on. Then flaps, up or down. Now, in the F-15, it's flaps up or flaps landing. At least that is the way in DCS. So we have to look up flaps. See, it only gives you flaps up or flaps landing position. So on the throttle, the top, button 7, I clicked the wrong button, I apologize. Flaps up, that's what I meant to click on, is button 7, the up on that 4-way switch. And flaps landing position, we'll go button position 9, which is down. Click OK. So flaps up will be the top, flaps down will be on the bottom part. That 4-way switch is now set. Our last, I would say, complicated switch here. This is another true 4-way position switch with spikes on top, so you can tell it apart. Without the modifier, this is how you select your mode on your HUD and radar. So up, position 11, is vertical scan. Forward and right is beyond visual range mode. Down or position button number 13 will be bore mode, and back left number or back/left on button number 14 will be navigation modes, and you cycle through waypoint and ILS information. So we will start 11, and this time we will go clockwise. So 11 will go to vertical scan. It's on the throttle, button 11, which is up. Now beyond visual range mode, throttle, the away or right or button 12, that's okay. Now we need to look at bore sight mode, throttle, the down or position switch number 13, okay, and then navigation modes. Throttle, the aft or left switch button number 14. There is also one more, not bore sight, I apologize, flood mode. I don't use it very often, so I don't have it mapped to any button on my throttle quadrant. It's keyboard 6 position, and that's a pretty good one. You only use that mode when using sparrows, which is not often. Okay, so we have that switch set up for base function. Now we just need to set up the modifier. So when we push button left with the modifier, we're going to scan up, button 12 with the modifier, scan right, button modifier with 13, scan down, button modifier with 14 is scan left. And this has to do with radar scan. So scanning up in altitude, scanning down, scanning left, scanning right. And we'll do this clockwise again. So we need to look scan. We're going to look scan up. So on the throttle, modifier, button number 11, which is the up button. So that makes sense. Scan right. The right one, away from the pilot, button 12. Looks good. Down, modifier, press button 13, the down button, so that makes sense as well. And then scan zone left, double click, modifier, and use the left switch, which is button 14. We have that set up. Coming back, the last thing we need to set up is button number 1 down at the very bottom, an orange button. That's jettison fuel tanks. You always want to make sure you jettison fuel tanks before getting into a dogfight, which is very important. Otherwise, your performance is terrible. So jettison fuel tanks. Going to go to throttle, double click, press that one, click OK. Now, before you leave this page, the all access commands, you have to click OK to save all your progress. Otherwise, it may not save. I don't understand why it sometimes does and sometimes doesn't, but you click it and you're done. With that, you are now set up to fly the F-15 Eagle in DCS, and now we can really get to having some fun. If you enjoyed this video or found it helpful in any way, please leave a like. If you'd like to see future videos, please subscribe. If you have questions or need help, leave a comment and I'll try to assist you. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the skies.